thing about this, the reason why this is so important, this is not just blind emotionalism. Because the thing about once you get to this place of releasing, then you open up the space and the place to hear the idea, to get the inspired action, to realize, oh, I actually had money that I forgot, or, oh, there's somebody else I should call. But as long as you're holding on to all of that stuff, you don't have access to the way that was always there, but we just couldn't see it. So what we're doing through this song, what we're doing through this moment is letting all of that stuff go, so now we're open. Now we're available to the idea. Now we're receptive to what Spirit is always speaking. Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. It is so good to be here with all of you. It feels good up in here. Yes, yes. So we're going to dig right in. We're talking about prosperity, the dynamic laws of prosperity, inspired by the book of the same name by Catherine Ponder. Now, in week 1, we started with there's gold dust everywhere. And what I simply said was that first we have to understand that our prosperity is just like the oxygen that we breathe. Just like we never wake up in the morning and say, I wonder if there's enough oxygen for us today, right? We just know that it's there. Your prosperity is the same way. There's gold dust everywhere for you. But we have to know that it's there and operate in the same way that we do as we breathe in oxygen easily and effortlessly. Last week, in week 2, the topic was lining up with God's yes. Recognizing that the source, the universe, as we live in an inclusive universe, is always saying yes. Yes and amen. That's the way it works. But we actually have to line up with it. And so I talked about a few ideas with that. First, that God's yes is not God's permission. You don't have to wait for God's permission on anything that you desire. Also, I talked about that we can line up with God's yes by understanding that it is right now. So as we pray right here and right now. And I talked about even adding right now to the end of your affirmations or to the beginning, as that is present within the text that Catherine Ponder writes. And finally, I talked about the idea that the mental work is the work. And so if you want to line up with God's yes, you actually do all of that work within yourself. It's not about going out and doing things. So as we have had a lot of things going on in our current events and in our country over the past week, and I do want to thank you all for those who have shared the video that we posted, and that is also available on the New Thought channel. Thank you all for the feedback, and Pastor Yolanda and I are both sat with what to say, and we're happy to hear that it resonated with so many of you. And I was reminded this week of a conversation. There was a meeting I was sitting in with some human rights activists from Brazil. And they're doing powerful work. They're documenting police brutality in the favelas in Brazil, in Rio. And a question was asked of them as they were sharing their work and all the things that they're doing and some of the wonderful things that have happened, how they've been able to bring folks to justice as it relates to using the video that they've captured. Someone asked them, well, what is your future goal? Like, what is the ultimate goal? What would life look like in the favelas if police brutality ended? Like, what are you really looking for? Because when you think about human rights, really the goal of human rights organizations is that they no longer exist. I mean, most human rights organizations never think about that. But the truth is, the desire is that all of the work that's being done would then change our environment, and then we wouldn't need human rights organizations because we would be living in a place of equality and justice. And what I found very interesting in that meeting, these very articulate brothers and sisters were stumped when that question was asked. Because they had lived their lives with this reality of police brutality. They had lived their lives with this reality, this day-to-day of this is how it is. And although they recognized that this is not how it should be, they were unable to fully articulate what that world would look like if it all ended, which is really their desire. And when I thought about that in the context of what's happening in this country, because I think that it is easy for us to get angry. That's the easy part. It's easy for us to point out what's wrong and who's not doing or not saying the right thing. But can you describe what the world that works for everyone looks like? Can we describe that? Again, it's easy for us to point out the injustice. It's easy to point out what's wrong. But can we easily describe and paint the picture of what day-to-day life would look like in the neighborhoods? Can we easily describe and paint the picture of what the life of our brown brothers would look like walking the streets of any city in this country? Can we easily describe what it would look like as brothers and sisters are in the halls of higher education? Can we easily describe what it would look like as a black family goes to apply to purchase a new home? Can we easily describe what that would look like? We can talk about the problems with mortgage lending and redlining, and we can talk about all these things. Can we easily describe what that world looks like? And what's interesting is that ability to describe what it is that we want is a prosperity principle. In chapter 5, Catherine Ponder calls it the imaging law of prosperity. And what I know to be true is that in order to experience any type of prosperity in our lives, we have to have a picture of what it looks like. If you don't have a picture of what it looks like, you'll never get there. Ever. It's interesting to me as well, I was reflecting on this, when we think about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968. And we know that many cities across this country were burning after that news came forward. And I recognize that I think that a lot of the dismay that was taking place was because people had attached themselves to his description. See, he could describe it, right? He articulated, I have a dream. And he was clear. He articulated what that looked like. And even further in his career, he got even more clear about what that looked like in terms of speaking to economics and speaking against militarism, right? He was very clear about what the world would look like. And what the masses had done is simply attach themselves to his description, didn't have their own description, and that's why they felt like all was lost. See, if we had collectively had our own description as well, then we would have said, of course, we're upset. He's our leader. He's our prophet. He's our brother. He is our elder. He's led us this far. But we know what it looks like. So we're not dismayed. We're not deterred. We recognize still what the goal looks like, and so we're going to keep moving forward. But because there was no what it looks like, because it could not be described, that's where everybody was like, all hope is lost. And so it's interesting, from 68 to now, we've had some success, and we've had some setbacks. We've had 8 years of Obama followed by a new presidency of Trump. And it would seem, how could that happen? Right? How could we go from all of the joy and the glee and the celebration that we all felt in 2008 to all that we feel in this year under the Trump presidency? Because we didn't have a description. We didn't have a guiding point that was guiding us. Again, people got lax when Obama got in office. Same thing. Oh, everything's good now. I don't need to have a description because Obama's in the White House and everything is good. Can we describe it? We have to be able to articulate what life is going to look like for ourselves if we want to get there. So in the imaging law of prosperity, Catherine Ponder writes this: since you are hoping for greater good in your life, you should begin to form the mental image of it in your mind. Your reasoning power may tell you that it can never be, but that doesn't matter. Your will may say your dream is too big to come true, that it is impossible to fulfill. But if you just dare to continue imaging it anyway, then your imagination will go to work for you to produce the visible result that you have been imaging. And in due time, your will can work for you also. Whatever the mind is taught to expect, that it will produce and bring forth for you. Whatever the mind is taught to expect, that it will build, produce, and bring forth for you. So just check in with yourself right now. Can you describe that life that you want? Can you describe what your life feels like? You may be clear of what's unwanted right now. You may be really clear about that. What you don't like, you're really clear about that. Cool. But can you describe what you want? Can you begin to project those ideas upon, as Neville Goddard calls it, the theater of your mind? Can you begin to project those ideas? Because until you're able to do that, you're going to get some good and some not good. Again, which I think reflects a lot of what we're seeing in this country. The wobble, the back and forth, a little bit of good and a little bit of not so good. Now, Catherine Ponder does something interesting. She quotes an ancient text. She quotes The Art of War. And I love that she does this, Sun Tzu. And Sun Tzu in The Art of War writes that in all fighting, the direct method may be used for joining battle, but indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. So what does that mean in this process? Last week I said the mental work is the work. Similarly, this imaging process, this beginning and being able to describe it, this is the indirect method. But the indirect method is actually how you get what it is that you want, right? We can use the direct method. We're living life. We're out here in life and we have encounters. We experience something which then gives us clarity about what we do want, right? That's the contrast of life, as Abraham Hicks would teach us, right? But in order to actually change what it is that we want, we have to use the indirect method, which I love in The Art of War. Sun Tzu says, indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. So often what we do is we're looking for victory, we're still using the direct method. We're still, as I love to say, we're looking at the mirror and we see that we need to change something on our face and we're manipulating the mirror. That's the direct method. The indirect method is, no, I don't touch the reflection, I touch the source. And so whatever change I need to make, I make it on my face. But what do we do in life? Our partner, our husband, our wife, our spouse, whoever it may be, they're not acting right. So we tell them, you're not acting right. And we think if we say, you're not acting right, they're going to change. But what do? They dig their heels in. They get stubborn. They become defensive. But the indirect method would have you start to describe, and we're going to talk about some specific tools and some specific ways, but you would begin to describe and create an image in your mind of what those conversations would sound like and look like and feel like, and what those interactions would look like and feel like. And then what's interesting is you'll secure the victory, because although it feels like magic, it's not, it's just law. All of a sudden they'll begin to say those things. They'll begin to form those things, or they will vibrate out of your life because they don't match what it is that you're creating within your own mind. The other piece of this, and I can't remember which message it was, and it was one of our movie series, and I preached a message on the book, the movie Turbo. I don't know if you've ever seen Turbo, the cartoon. It was the animated movies, right, we did? And I shared a couple different principles, and one of those principles I call is the hush your mouth principle. Because the other part of this imaging law of prosperity is what Catherine Ponder says is we must quietly image our good. Instead of battling with poverty, failure, and financial lack, which often only multiplies your problems, begin using the indirect method, that of quietly, deliberately, and persistently imaging your good. That means you don't have to talk to everybody about it. Hush your mouth. Because you haven't even got it good yet yourself. So as you're imagining it, as you're creating it in your mind, just quietly spend time thinking about it, meditating on it, visualizing it, picturing it, using one of the tools that I'm going to share a little later. And don't talk to anybody about it. And one of the ways that you'll know that it's cool to talk about it, once you finally do talk about it or you hear yourself talking about it, you might come across some doubt from anybody, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your best friend, but it won't deter you in any way. Really? You want to go back to school now and you're 50 years old? Really? You're 60, you want to go back to school? You're not going to feel weird being in a class with all those young people? And you'll hear that and you'll be like, yes, I am. All is well. But normally what happens when we tell that too early because we haven't hushed our mouth, we get shook up. We're like, oh, maybe they're right. Oh, well, I know they love me, so they wouldn't tell me anything, to harm me. Oh, wow. And then all of a sudden that doubt creeps in, and now that worry, doubt, and fear is now being imaged on our minds. Another way to look at this, and this has everything to do with how Pastor Yolanda and I created CSC. Catherine Ponder talks about the power of a master plan. Essentially, as we're using this imaging law of prosperity and creating in that way, we're creating blueprints. So what Pastor Yolanda and I did way back in 2012, December of 2012, we began visioning. And at CSC, we know that the life visioning process is a process that we use to create and catch the vision for what Source is seeking to express in our lives. Now, that started with us visioning individually. First, we needed to just get aligned with the yes. Because although we were both hearing Celebration Spiritual Center in Brooklyn, we both had to move through our own thoughts about that, right? So once we aligned with that, then we could come together and we vision together what is God's idea of itself as Celebration Spiritual Center. And we sat and we listened and we heard new ideas started to come forth. And what happened in that month, we quietly, nobody knew it. We didn't utter it to anybody. We began to write out everything that was coming forth. It started with a multiple page document that we call our founding document that gave us what the first phases of launching the Spiritual Center would be. And then we also ultimately ended up creating, how many pages is that document? About a 50-page document with the roles and responsibility of every job or every office or every position within the organization, even though it was just the two of us and we didn't know most of y'all. We were creating CSC as if CSC was a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 member church. That's how we saw it. I mean, literally, that's how we saw it. And so that's how we wrote. That's how we created. That's how we talked. That's how we created systems. That's how we created processes that are still serving us to this day. So as we are in year 4.5, we're not worried or wonder, like, what do we do next in year 5? We go back to the document. What's even more interesting is we'll have meetings and we'll have conversations about what's next, thinking that we're coming up with a new idea. And then we go back to the document and it's like, oh, it was already there. So what happened is that as we imaged this in our minds and hushed our mouths, we were able to create this master plan, this blueprint that's a living document that now informs us and guides us. We know exactly where we're going. We know what CSC will look like in 10 years. We know what CSC will look like in 15, 20 years because of this process. You all wouldn't be sitting here had we not used this imaging law of prosperity, right? So that's what it looks like. Now, in the text, Catherine Ponder offers a tool. She offers a process that is familiar to most of us because the process that she's offering sounds like vision boarding, but then she shifts it just a little bit. And she calls it making a wheel of fortune. And in that process, as she's talking about this wheel of fortune, she says results have to be planned and then visualized before they can become a living reality. And so what she offers is that you can take, a poster board, right? You draw a circle. And in the center of that circle, that's the God in you, right? And so you put a picture or an image, something that represents God to you, that represents divinity for you. And in this example, then she writes the affirmation, divine intelligence is in charge of my life. I am now open, receptive, and obedient to its rich instruction and guidance. That has to be the center, right? And then from there, she draws lines so that you have 4 sections. And each of the sections, you give it a category. In this example, one category was business, one was family, one was spiritual, and the other is social and recreational. And she talks about a gentleman who was an engineer, and he wanted a new job, and he wanted a new position, and he knew that the position that he wanted would require him and his family to have to move. So that meant that they needed to sell their home. That means they needed to get a new home. That means he needed to think about getting his family safely into a new state. And so he began to form that idea. And so in his career, he put pictures that represented this new engineering job that he wanted. And then he put an affirmation or a prayer underneath that. I am now activated by divine intelligence, motivated by divine love, and guided by divine power into my right work, which I perform in a perfect way for perfect pay. The divine plan of my life now takes shape in definite, concrete experiences leading to perfect health, happiness, success, and prosperity. There's no wavering in that prayer. You hear that? perfect way for perfect pay. And it now takes shape in definite, concrete experiences, leading to perfect health, happiness, success, and prosperity. Now for his home and family, again, he needed to sell his house. So what does he write there? Divine intelligence directs the right buyer to this property. Everyone concerned is blessed by a just and orderly exchange of values. Again, this is what affirmative prayer sounds like. There's no wishing, there's no hoping, there's no begging. And it recognizes that we all win through this process, right? The other thing I love, and if you go back to the text, you can read through all the affirmations, but I love that the word divine is placed in each of these affirmations. Divine intelligence is in charge of my life. Divine intelligence, divine love, divine power. Divine intelligence, again, directs the right, because again, it recognizes and acknowledges the fact that there's gold dust everywhere, and that gold dust is God itself. God is everywhere. It's working in, through, and as this thing, as my life, and it is me, right? I'm not separate from it, so I'm clear that that's the power that I want to operate. He also wrote, as he recognized that his family may have some trouble with the transition and recognizing that they're closing a door, he put a picture of a door, and he wrote, as one door closes, another bigger and better door opens. Powerful, right? He also realized after all this move and all this stuff, we're going to need a time of rest, and we're going to need to maybe take a vacation. So he put pictures of the vacation he wanted to go on and wrote, we give thanks for the divinely planned vacation under divinely planned conditions with divinely planned and divinely manifest supply. Yeah. Y'all want me to read that again? Right? We give thanks for the divinely planned vacation under divinely planned conditions with the divinely planned and divinely manifest supply. Now, I love this, right? There's so much good in this, right? Because how do we usually think about vacations, right? Oh, I would love to go somewhere. Oh, but I don't have enough time. Divinely planned conditions, right? See, I don't have enough time. I don't know. Well, what about my kids? Who's going to watch the kids? Oh, well, I don't know. I need new luggage. I don't have luggage that I need, right? All of these things, we start to get into all of these doubts and all of these things. But when you affirm a divinely planned vacation, that means that the divinity within you is going to lead you to the luggage you need, or somebody will give it to you. It'll show up easily and effortlessly. It means that you'll randomly get an email about some discounts on a vacation. Right? All of these things, right? Divinely planned vacation under divinely planned conditions. That means that the time you need to take off will be available. It'll be easy and effortless. You don't have to worry about it. And then divinely manifest supply. That means you don't have to use your rent money to go on vacation. You don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul. Well, I deserve this vacation, so I'm just going to figure it out. Or it means you don't have to go in debt and use all your credit cards, and then I'll figure it out when I get back. Divinely manifest supply. That means that somebody could just come up to you and say, you were just on my mind, and I just want to give you this $2,000. I don't know why, but it was just on my mind. Can you use this? And I'm not making this up. This happens all the time. Because Source is operating in, through, as, and all of us, right? In, through, and as all of us. So Source, as your friend or your brother or your sister, will get that inspired idea, and God will use them to give you what you've been affirming. And then finally, in this Wheel of Fortune, to just cover his overall prosperity, he wrote these words: I am now guided by divine intelligence so that divine order is established and maintained in all my financial affairs. Again, it just eliminates all of that doubt and worry. Because he had a lot going on, right? He wanted to manifest this new job, and recognizing that manifesting this new job meant moving. And that meant managing the feelings of his wife and his kids and all of the new things that were going to happen there, being in a new neighborhood and having to go to a new school and meeting new friends. And then he realized, but we still want to go on vacation. We still want to have a good time. We don't want to constrict ourselves and, we just moved, so we can't do anything, and we got to be really tight. He said, no, we want to be in joy. We want to have a good time. He also recognized that many times we can come into fear, that when something ends, we get sad. When something ends, we're like, oh no, well, maybe I shouldn't have left that good thing. Maybe I shouldn't have left that good job. Well, things were really good in the other state. He said, no, when one door closes, another bigger, better door opens. To get his mind to expect and know that wherever he's going is going to be bigger. It's going to be better than all of the good that he already experienced. Are you getting excited about this? You're going to create your wheels this week? Yes, yes. And again, I encourage you to go to the text in chapter 5 because there's more affirmations there. And of course, what happened? He manifested his job. He began to look at that wheel of fortune on a daily basis. And again, what vision boards do, as we just take images, that starts to impress our mind. But when you add that with the spoken word, when you add that with the power of these prayers and affirmations, so you're directing your mind, because this is the difference between imaging and just visualizing, right? That you're literally directing your mind. That's not just a picture, because then you could get, anything that looks like that. You could get the vacation, but then get sick on the vacation and not have a good time, right? So you manifested the vacation. But when you put the words to it that it's divinely planned under divine conditions with divinely manifested supply, your mind is then clear. It's not going to waver and give you just some of what you want. It's going to give you all of what you want in the way that you've created the blueprints. So in closing, I want to leave you with what Catherine Ponder writes. Don't compromise in your mental images. Image what you really want, not just what you think you can probably have. Pay no attention to your will and reason, which will try to talk you out of your mental images. Hear that again. Image what you really want, not just what you think you can probably have. See, our will and our reason, it gets us in trouble, right? Oh, well, yeah, I'll take a staycation because I believe I can do that. Nothing wrong with staycations. Staycations are awesome. But if you're doing a staycation because you think you can't afford something else, right? That's your will and reason, because you haven't allowed your sense of possibility to know that you can travel anywhere, you can do anything, right? So don't just image just what you think you can probably have, and pay no attention to your will and reason in this space. This is like that moment again, we talked about the Matrix last month when Morpheus asked Neo, do you think that that's air you're breathing? That's what you have to say to your will and reason, because it's operating under fixed laws. It's operating under limitation. And so you have to say to it, wait, no, I'm not breathing air. I'm operating in the theater of my mind where there are no rules except the rules that I create. So I'm not going to allow the will and reason in my mind to limit me to what I've seen, to limit me to what I've heard, to limit me to what somebody said I can have, to limit me to what somebody said I can do. But I'm going to allow myself to dream big. I'm going to allow myself to dream higher. I'm going to allow myself to dream wider than I ever have before, because in the theater of my mind, all things are possible. And so then we affirm this together. I affirm you to affirm this together. This or something better. My unlimited good will be done. This or something better. My unlimited will. My unlimited good will be done. Let's stand, everybody. Let's stand, everybody. These tools are always simple. We just got to use them. Nothing that I've described here today is hard in any way. We used to do it all the time when we were kids. We used to do it all the time when we were kids. You're still that kid. You're just in a bigger body, that's all. And now you just get to imagine bigger things because you're an adult. Now you can imagine yourself ruling over an empire, right? Now you can imagine a multi-million-dollar business. Now you can imagine all of these things. Yeah, you're not a kid, so there's things you couldn't do back then. Now you can imagine yourself traveling all over the world for 180 days because you're the big person now. Now you get to dream big kid dreams. Are you ready to be the big kid and dream? Big kid dreams? This or something better. My unlimited good will be done. Lord have mercy. Mother, Father, God, we recognize that you are the yes within us. You are that supporter within us that is always poised, that is always ready, willing, and able to give us what we can describe. That you are always ready, willing, and able to give us what we project upon the theater of our mind. That you are ready, willing, and able to give us even beyond what we can imagine. We are grateful for that reality right here and right now. We are grateful as you manifest as this law, this imaging law of prosperity. Prosperity meaning peace, good health, and plenty in every area of our lives. As we recognize that you are this law and you are always in operation, we recognize that we are one with this imaging law. Because in truth, we are always imagining something. We are imagining it deliberately or we are imagining it randomly. But we forgive ourselves here and now and we set ourselves free for the random imaginations. We forgive ourselves. When we know better, we do better. And now we do. And so now that we have removed all of the shame and all of the blame and all the beating ourselves up for random imaginations, we now turn our attention and our focus on what it is that we want. We turn our focus and our attention on possibility. We turn our focus and our attention on our careers, and we imagine that we can have the career that we absolutely want. We turn down the volume on the will and the reason, which tries to tell us what is possible from a limited perspective, but we turn up the volume on our unlimited nature, on our unlimited seeing, which sees good and only good for us. We turn up the volume on it now. We turn up the volume and allow ourselves to see within our families and within our society and within our neighborhoods a new way of being. We see ourselves living free. We see ourselves living in harmony. We see ourselves living in togetherness. We see our country living in a way that it has never lived before. There's an energy that's moving into the space. There's an energy that's moving into this country right now. Things are already shifting. Things are already changing. And so we allow that to inform what is possible. There was a time that we did not think it was possible for Confederate symbols and statues to be taken down, but they're being taken down everywhere. And so as we see that and we know that, we now imagine a new world. We now imagine a new way of being. We now imagine and see that there are new heads of state moving into our governments, moving into our state government, and moving into our city government, and moving into Congress, and moving into the presidency. We now see people that are moving into these places of power that are aligned with who and what we are, that are aligned with our values, that are aligned with family, that are aligned with togetherness, that are aligned with unity, that are aligned with the highest ideals of our country, that we are created equal. We now begin to affirm and see that and expect that within our mind's eye. We begin to describe it. We begin to describe the harmonious ways that the police interacts with the community. We begin to describe it. We begin to describe and see the ways that corporations begin to think of people first, begin to think of cities first, begin to think of our environment first, because they recognize that they are a living entity within the living entity that is our earth. We begin to describe it. We begin to see it. We know that it is. We know that it is right now. We see it within the theater of our mind, and that's our truth. That is our only truth. No longer do we wait to just see it outside of ourselves, but we know it within ourselves. I am so grateful and thankful for these Imagineers that are in the place right now. I am so grateful and thankful for these possibilians that are in the place right now and within the sound of my voice, because each and every one of you, as an Imagineer, as a person that is able to imagine something that you cannot see with your physical eyes, you will create that in your lives, and you will create that in your communities, and you will create that on this planet and within this country. We choose to be possibilians and Imagineers. And as we live from this place and space of describing within our own hearts and minds what we want to see, we know that you, Mother, Father, God, will say yes to it and line up with it and bring it forth easily and effortlessly through the path of least resistance. So right here and right now, we let it be. We expect it. We expect it and we look for it with the same anticipation that children look for presents on Christmas morning. That's the way we anticipate and look for our good to show up in our lives. For this, I am so very grateful. I release this prayer now, and together we say amen, ashe, and so it is. And so it is. Thank you, God.